So we do require homeowners insurance. And as Sally mentioned, we have a number of different income thresholds. And so we are looking for households that are at or below 80% of area median income. This is the 2023-2024 area median income thresholds. These are readdressed by HUD every summer. And so we do often see a little bit of upward bounce momentum in these numbers. We have these on our website. Our staff has them. Neighborhood Resource Center staff has them. And so if anyone has questions about household size and qualifying, we can get those numbers available. Okay, next slide. Okay, so assistance available. As Sally mentioned previously, we could provide up to $5,000 in assistance. That's based on the fact that if we exceed $5,000 with federal funds, we have to do a lead risk assessment, and we have to either do interim controls or abatement for everything that is found. That's not a bad thing, but we didn't really have the tools previously to do that. And so we were talking about getting into large amounts of money and really not being able to complete projects. So part of our hold and now relaunch is we're excited. We purchased the tool that we can assess lead risk. And so we can come in and we can find out not only what's the project that drove somebody to apply, but what other risks might there be in the home. Staff will come out when a project is at the top of the wait list. They'll come out, they'll observe the primary concern as well as any other concerns listed, but they'll use their expertise and they'll look for everything that might be needed. So we can do up to 5,000 as forgivable. That is the same as it's always been. I'll give just a moment. And then 20,000 is now available with a risk assessment for lead. That will be a long-term deferred loan. And yes, that will have to be paid back when that unit is no longer occupied by that homeowner or a first line heir who qualifies for income and everything else. And so also because we want to see homeowner buy-in, we are requiring a 10% match for that additional 20,000. This is not free and easy money. This is about stabilizing you and your unit and investing alongside in that unit. And so, for example, if somebody, this is the kind of project that drove this reconsideration. If somebody comes in and they need a furnace, it's cold, but we get in and we discover actually they need an electrical upgrade to meet the codes to support that new furnace. Well, quickly we've exceeded 5,000. So historically we would do the electrical 1 year, which left that person cold for a year. And we'd come back the next year and do the furnace. And that's just ridiculous. That's not good use of city staff time. That doesn't help the homeowner with that need. So now what we can do is we could come in, we could do the electrical, furnace, and air. We'll do the 5,000 that's forgivable after 5 years. Maybe there's $3,000 more. And so the homeowner would be responsible for $300. And then the city would do $2,700 as a deferred loan. So I did see a question back here.
I want to piggyback on the question concerning the young lady over here mentioned earlier. Now I know I'm repeating it, but the fact of the matter is I'd like to know, where does the money come from when it's over 5,000 and the city now can give away 5,000 after the person that lives in the home have lived there for more than 5 years or so. But then you, on the other hand, you have a person, homeowner, that has lived in a home for 40 years and their amount may be 10,000 or a little more, but the homeowner has now replaced the roof, replaced the plumbing, replaced everything that the city did in the beginning for them, replaced the windows, the doors, whatever it was that the city assisted them in the beginning. Those things have broken down, and homeowner now has had to have repair on everything that they assisted. Not to say that they're not appreciative of what they did in the beginning, but that they had to work and scrape because they could not enter the program again because they may not have, the availability or whatever. But I just don't understand how they can create a program to forgive money now after 5 years and zero it out when after 40 years they can't release that lien off that property. So now that party that is still living in the home can go and get money that they, say they're not at a place where they want to get a loan because they've got too much riding on it, but the property still need work. As you live in a home, you always will need work going forward and lots of money. Like, after 40 years or more, you need foundation. That's a lot of money, that you have to get from a bank institution. But the banks will not allow you to have city with first lien on your property. So you're stuck. And what does your house still do? It still crumbles. And it crumbles also because the city allows the tractor trailers to come through your neighborhood and shake your house 24/7. And I don't understand all of these logistics, all these legal things that they come up with. One doesn't make sense when another one is okay, but the other one doesn't make sense. And so my question is, who and where is gonna have the understanding to create this, forgivable part of a person that has lived in their home over 40 years, and it should be forgiven. Because all of the things that they're looking at right now is what they've had to repair out of their own pocket. Because the lien is over their head, and they don't qualify for any more money from the loans that are being created now that are forgivable. So that leaves them out.
So I actually do evaluate a number of situations like that, and we have several options in that situation. I will say historically, 5,000 went a lot further. So as Sally mentioned, we had a policy change in 2005. Before that time, we actually would do whole house renovations. And so a lot of the mortgages that we're looking at that are 20 years old and older are smaller in today's numbers, but they were very large at that point in time. And the idea at that point in time was that those mortgages would sustain that household for the long term. Obviously, you're right, when we're talking mortgages 40 and 50 years old, a lot of those projects have had to be done and redone. But we as staff do not have the power or the authority to override the terms of that legal agreement. We must enforce the legal agreement.
That's my question. And who does? I've been wondering for over 10 years, who does have the authority to reduce that down so that a homeowner can go to a bank and now get money that they need for big jobs like foundations. Someone does have that authority because they created the forgivable. They can denounce the others.
So again, the forgivable began in 2005, and since that time, it's been 5,000 forgivable. So much smaller amounts. What we can do now, and we have two types of mortgage profiles. We have the home repair profile. We also have a profile tied to our Home 80 down payment assistance program. And so when somebody is looking at either selling or needing to take out like home equity line of credit or other financing, often what they'll do is they'll have that lender reach out to us, find out what is owed, and they will roll that amount into the new loan. That gets us out of the way. It fulfills all of our HUD compliance agreements. It fulfills all of the legal agreements, and it allows them to proceed forward with the payoff at that point in time. I will emphasize 0% interest, so the longer they live on that unit, the less would have been financed under traditional financing the longer they go. Ultimately, it is the city council that has the right and the authority to overrule that, but as Sally said, that's a very difficult line because over the years, many of these have been repaid. And so to turn around and forgive would probably actually bring inequities with people who have already fulfilled those terms and repaid. We recognize we have an older mortgage portfolio, and so I am actually doing some research into that. What we tried to do with this new program is really a hybrid approach to where the 5,000 remains forgivable. But if we exceed 5,000, that money lives in that unit for as long as that homeowner lives in that unit or a direct line qualifying heir. And then when that person is no longer in that unit, that money comes back for reinvestment in the community. So we've really tried to look at the problems of the past that are beyond what we can resolve and to try to find a good hybrid that allows us to do more and balance that opportunity. Is,
What are the
Have
payments
you-
on the 20,000? What are the payments on the 20,000?
there are no payments until the unit is sold or transferred. It is 0% interest, for as long as it
Who
lives.
services these loans?
The city
What
does.
they pay it off, but they don't have this problem.
I would just say it's good that you're looking into studying this, because your remarks kind of remind me of
She's
the argument,
trying to
of
get out.
student loan forgiveness. So we don't want to do that because others have already paid, and I think that's not a substantial reason to not notice it, issue and challenge and move forward on it, you know, so.
It is a tough and complex issue, and my hope is this is a project we're aware of. Within my team of 12, we have a lot of projects that we're moving forward right now. We are also the land bank, the Affordable Housing Fund, home repair, housing development loan program, and public housing. But it is a project that I'm working on in the background, and hope at some point to have some policy or full council to say, one of our biggest challenges is when people don't do title work when they sell the unit, and others inadvertently purchase that debt. And so it's a complex issue. There are no easy solutions,
Right.
but I am looking at the challenge and what options we could bring to officially form policy. Yes, and sorry, yes.
Have you yet seen any commercial lenders that have taken that into account and rolled it in? Have you seen any
Yes,
of
it
that?
happens frequently. I will say right now, it seems like between inflation and other things, we have an uptick in the funds. And so what typically happens is the lender reaches out to us. They'll request what's called a subordination, where we say, will we take the city's loan and lower it below what the consumer is requesting? If it's for something valid, like additional home updates being done by a qualified contractor, that is a consideration we can make to subordinate the city's loan to something that.
And something like she was talking about, a structural foundation would be critical.
Now, a lot of times what we're seeing is people are looking for a home equity line of credit. They're refinancing consumer debt, or things like that. We have an obligation to the city and to the taxpayers that we do not put the city's funds at risk below that. And so at that point, what we usually do is we negotiate that payoff, which then makes them free and clear to pursue what they need from their home's equity. Yes.
I think, if you enter in a contract with the city at 45 while you're working, and then you have a 15, 20-year loan with the city, when you become a senior, sometimes that money that was coming in no longer coming in,
Mhm.
is what she was trying to say. I think
Right.
so many ways they on a fixed income now. As opposed to when they went into the contract, they had money coming from Boeing, Cessna, Beach, wherever. And that's what she tried to say, the forgiveness program should be able to help some of the seniors. That's what she's looking at, the senior problems that they're having. I mean, we're not talking about the population, you know, everyone in here, I've looked at everyone in here, and almost everybody in here is over 60. They're seniors. You got the.
Leave it alone.
But I like.
We gotta get out of here.
Joe. I know it's funny, but.
There is no other loan product that I'm aware of that charges 0% and stays with you as long as you're in that home. And so ideally, we would love to see seniors be able to stay in that home for the rest of their lives. We do advise you to tell your heirs about the program, about its conditions, because if you have a child living with you and they continue to live in that home and they're also low to moderate income, they inherit that loan under the same terms. It is interest-free and it is deferred for as long as that qualifying household lives in that unit.
I understand that,
Mhm.
but I still say we, you know, the sympathy and, you know, that we should have for the ones who put the money up in there, pay the taxes, did everything they're supposed to do as a humanity allowed us to do. That we should be able to have some kind of forgiveness for that particular senior. If that home is dilapidated and he's gonna have to move,
And the other thing is that we do have a lifetime threshold through this program of 40,000 per unit. We have a few units in the city that have met that threshold, but many others, under this program now, we will try to assist somebody with a comprehensive project. And then they're not eligible again for 5 years, but after 5 years, they can come back for more, and we could do another project. Now, our goal is to, yeah, our goal is to make that unit livable for 15 to 20 years with one project. But we know that the condition of some of the homes, that we might hit that 25,000 plus the homeowners 2,000 buy-in, and we might be back in 5 years. But we don't want to be back next year. That's really the key to it all. I see a hand over here.
What about, what the lady was saying in the back there? After the person's lived there 40 years, what about developing a plan so that after 20 years, if the city loans, that you were just speaking of, can be forgiven if they're there so many 20, 25 years? So they don't, 40 years later, still have that over their head. So
You know, there are a lot of options. One of the nice things with community development block grant funds is that it is local options. What we tried to do is to create some revolving, so it comes back and is reinvested, and some that's forgivable, but
right.
those
But
are,
if
those are
there's a lot
programs
of,
you can have a council members.
if there's a lot of options, then why can't something like that be developed?
And we did consider that option. Ultimately, we settled for this new program on this two-tiered option. And so if somebody doesn't want a forever deferred loan, we can do a project for 5,000. And somebody can access their 40,000 unit max, 5,000 at a time every 5 years, and never have to worry about that forever.
How does that work? Flesh out.
So basically, if somebody needs, let's say a water service line has a break, that runs about $5,000. And so we could do $5,000 in that project, say it comes in 5,200. Well, then the homeowner would be responsible for anything above 5,000. But we don't cross that all important HUD threshold to where we have to get into deferred territory. So we could assist one time with that water line, but with the caveat that we're not gonna come back and do more the next year. We're gonna wait 5 years until that loan's forgiven. And part of this is about not compounding.
Okay, so in that program, after 5 years, that's forgiven?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So really it's a two-tiered program. The first tier is that 5,000.
Thank
And then
you.
that applies, if somebody wants to go up to 25,000 in total assistance, no matter what, the very first 5,000, we're gonna process as forgivable. Because we want to be able to forgive. It's just that if we're putting more into somebody's unit, then we really need to have a little more buy-in and a little more investment. And so,
Thank you.
I'm seeing a couple other hands.
So my suggestion with, when we're talking about, buy-in is to do something similar to, what Habitat does, which I don't know all the rules, but I know you can work off, equity. So to me, that would be another viable option when it comes to that long-term one. If you were able to do sweat equity and really, work off the loan.
You know, it's difficult to revise what's already happened, but I will say one of my other under the surface initiatives has been to build strong partnerships with others in the community who do similar work. And so I'm trying to understand, maybe if a project doesn't fit our program, or if a homeowner is hesitant to get into the conditions of our program, could we refer them to Habitat?
No, I'll tell you why, because, and so here's my struggle. I am a person that is going to inherit a home, but I don't meet the income requirement. And so for me, it looks like being held in poverty in order to stay in this home. I can actually inherit the home just fine. That part's fine. But there's an income restriction on it. So with that being said, it essentially is holding me to a lower income in order to inherit this home. That's problematic.
Unfortunately, that is beyond our control, that is beyond the
No,
council.
but when we're talking
That is
about,
community development block grants.
so when we're talking about how we develop these programs, these are the issues that we have to be mindful of. Because they all sound really good, top surface, hey, we have all these income requirements, we're gonna lower it, but then what is the other side of that? So I cannot, as an heir, inherit this property unless I live in poverty.
And those are places, one of my goals with my employees is to raise them up in the financial counseling aspect of this as well. Historically, we've had a tremendous priority on just delivering the jobs, delivering the service. And sometimes people haven't been fully aware of the fact this is a mortgage product. And so mortgage counseling will be a greater focus of this and helping people to understand as they take this product out, what could be the impact on themselves and their heirs so that they can make an informed decision before they go forward.
Now, it's not really that she can't inherit the property, just that she can't qualify for these
Yes.
types of loans.
Right, that's what we're talking about, misuse of words, but you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not talking about, because that's not the same process, inheriting something. What I'm saying is, when I inherit the home, I inherit the debt, okay? But if there is an income, and there is a income restriction on who actually can take over that property, then that makes me obsolete, actually. So I'm going to be an heir, but also my income is to be considered. Or I have to pay back the loan, like full face value, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So
So I'm seeing Sally give me a wrap it up. Is there one more question from somebody who hasn't asked yet?
I just said one question, I saw that on the screen that if they don't have insurance, qualify for the loan. In my neighborhood, I used to go out and do construction in the community, and the first thing I asked them, do you have insurance? 60 or maybe 40% don't have insurance because they had to get a roof fixed.
Yes.
I had to get, foundation repaired, so that half of them wouldn't qualify for the loan because
That's a
those
great,
stipulations.
great comment. And the way we will handle that is that we'll work with the proposed insurance company. They'll need to send us a letter stating that the policy will be able to be effective upon completion of the project. And so if somebody doesn't have insurance, but is willing to get insurance and work with the company to do that, then we'll take a letter stating that. But then we will follow up to make sure that policy is put into place. Because again, we don't want to have a fire or a tornado or other damage to a property that isn't insured, and then we're coming back as the collection agency. So I'll say, I have one more question.
Okay, this is gonna be quick. I just really, want, yourself and the people that you work with, and you guys come to the round table and decide on how to make these laws concerning these loans that you're doing for the people. My question is, what makes whoever makes these decisions about forgivable or non-forgivable, realize that after 5 years, they're debt free, they owe the city nothing, that they won't go out and sell their property, and then you've given them an scapegoat to utilize it however they wish. Otherwise, on the other hand, you have somebody that's been in a home 44 years or more, and they have repaired everything that the city may have done for them, and now they're older, and they don't have the income to pay that back. But what if they're forced into a situation, like I mentioned, foundation? And they cannot afford that as senior citizens. But they can't afford to come to the city for any more help either, because there's a big loan out there still against their homes. And the banks won't give them a loan because of the first lien on the property. And the city won't take a second back, the bank won't take a second back. So, but you're wanting to encourage people to stay in their homes, but they're falling apart. So what do you do? Do the city have a heart for humanity enough to do a forgivable for the older people, just like they did for whoever that was in the 5-year deal? I just don't think it's fair. I think somebody needs to really think about what they're doing. Because after all, it's money, it's city taxpayers' money, it's everybody's money. So
So
we
that
all
would
need
be-
help. Everybody needs to help each other.
I will say, I'm out here today, but I'm also in my office all day, every day, and I'm the one who personally handles those situations. And so that would be where if you hit that point where a repair is needed, where a subordination is needed, I'm the one you're gonna be working with through that to try to say, how do we get to yes? Is there a way? What can we do? What options can we offer? I can't guarantee I'm gonna make you happy in the end, but I'm gonna look at every option in my toolbox to try to get to meet the need in the end, while also respecting the policy that we operate under. So, seeing Councilmember Johnson ready to take the floor.
Well, Sally and Sarah are awesome. They do great work. I am glad that they were able to join us today and that you were here. I do want to encourage you as we continue to have breakfast to bring other folks. The reason we bring out these guest speakers like Sally and Sarah is so you learn about what's going on. But also, to your point, so they can hear from community on ways to improve programs. That's why we continue to have these. Every time we bring someone out, they may be talking about a program and there's an opportunity to hear from each of you about one, is it good, is it not, how we can make it better. And then sometimes educate you on unfortunate information, like which she mentioned, some of this is HUD, which is not us, it's not them. That's where we would need our federal partners, like Senator Moran or Senator Marshall or Representative Estes. And even then, sometimes it doesn't matter because it may be a congressional law that needs to be changed, and you know how hard that is, but it's always better to be informed. Other times it may be our state partners. That's why it's good to have Representative Carr here and others. I always invite our state level electeds to one of our breakfasts as well. But the goal of these is to inform and also to gain some feedback. So I am grateful that each of you are here. I'll give you a couple quick updates. One disappointing thing I did just learn, I'm gonna get with Representative Carr on is, many of you have heard me say we need to tie some of our city incentives to, doing some good. So with affordable housing, as people come to us for IRBs or CIDs for housing and saying, if you want a city incentive, you should have a certain amount of affordable housing available. Found out that's illegal. State statute won't allow us to do that. So I'll be calling Representative Carr, but it's those types of things when we talk about it and it comes up in community, when we do a little bit of research, we may see there's a barrier. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means we got another step to take. So sometimes you get some information that doesn't make you happy, but we just know we got to put our shoes on and keep working. So some quick updates. A lot of what I had to say, you got to see today. We have a new mayor. We have new council members, District 4, Council Member Glasscock, District 5, Council Member Johnston, District 2, Council Member Tuttle was reelected. We have a new mayor, of course. We also have a new vice mayor. Council Member Ballard is now Vice Mayor Ballard for District 6. For those who don't know, that does rotate every year. I had the honor of being vice mayor in 2021. We don't get a pay bump, but we do get extra work. In a different part, which is only good part of the year. When it's a torrential downpour, your car is right there catching it all. When it's snowing and ice, your car is right there catching all of that too. The mayor is always nice and insulated. But we do have a new vice mayor and she is excited about that role and working with the mayor. You all had a chance to talk to them, so I don't have to discuss that. We did approve a concept and funding design for Platt Park. As many of you know, there were many in the community who wanted to see that remain more green space and less development. Councilmember Hoheisel has really taken that to heart. So the only real development in the park is a inclusive park. I think we have only one in Sedgwick County. That park's gonna be awesome. So if we have folks with disabilities or in a wheelchair, they'll be getting the swings and all of that equipment. There is a zip line. I'm disappointed that it's not longer. I've asked for higher and longer, but it's not. I asked for a weight requirement of at least 230. I don't think it's there. We're gonna keep working on that. That's a real policy issue. But that has happened. Excited about that. We did approve our joint legislative agenda and our city legislative agenda. We've already talked to folks in Topeka about that. We're gonna stay on it. Not everyone's issue made it above the line, but we're still looking at some of those. So we have an advocate section. We have a watch section. So many of you who know, we were looking to see some reforms on Stand Your Ground. That's on the watch section. When we were there, I heard that we weren't making any progress on that. There are some representatives, I know Representative Carr cares about that, but some of those in leadership are not moving that forward. So that's something we're gonna continue to look at. If you recall, when CJ Lofton was murdered over at Jayak, stand your ground was one of the reasons that the DA didn't press charges. And many of us were wondering how you could use stand your ground in a facility where somebody's outnumbered. So we're gonna keep looking for some changes on that. And really, it's just definition and wording, not abolishing stand your ground, but making sure you can't use that in a facility like that. We recently held our council workshop, the one for January, went over citizen survey results on some issues. I do want to say, if you ever get that or hear from us that you're gonna get a survey, please fill it out. Out of the 5,000 that went out, we had about 553 respond. So please respond to those. We do listen, we have workshops, we try to make decisions on that. And more specifically, because we all talk about budget, a lot of our budget priorities this year are based on citizen survey. We're gonna continue to engage in person, via social media in any way we can, but we start to look at budget priorities based on those. So if you do get those, please fill those out. We also talked about the community dashboard to see that, some performance management, AKA budget, and kind of starting those budget decisions. As the mayor talked about earlier, we did talk about economic development policy with our assistant city manager, Troy Anderson. He will be a guest at one of our future breakfasts because I want you all to hear what we're doing for economic development, both overall and in community. So we did have that, and then we all got a briefing on this, but mostly for our new members, talking about CORA, COMA, and our ethics policy. CORA is Kansas Open Records Act. That means if there's information you all want to see from the government, you can actually file and get that information. Any types of records. Kansas Open Meetings Act really is telling us what we can and cannot do. The 4 of us are in a space, so today we had the mayor and Councilmember Glasscock and myself. If we would have had another council member here, we cannot talk policy because that's the majority of the governing body. So it might have been a boring conversation for you. Today the weather's either nice or not outside, but we learn about those things and we do take it serious. You don't see what happens in our council office. Oftentimes, the 3 of us are talking and the 4th one walks up, one of us will walk away. We do that. We govern ourselves. So we make sure that we're doing that, whether you all are watching or not. The ethics policy governs us as electeds, but also everyone that we appoint. So we heard about that as well. That is on the workshop. You can view that. It's on our YouTube channel. For anyone who doesn't have access to that, if you can get to one of our workshops, public does not comment, but you can sit in there and listen to what we're talking about. Workshops are important because that's kind of where the first drafting of policy comes from. So the conversation today about what some of the challenges in housing or that program, when Sarah or Sally or their team comes up with a policy, it's gonna come to a workshop. From that workshop, we will either say we want it to come to district advisory boards or just come to council. So those workshops are important. They may be long, it may be a lot of information. I tell people some of our meetings are boring, but in all of that boring stuff, there's some really important things that can impact us. Other than that, ongoing issues, challenges, the emergency winter shelter is still open. I've been around talking to folks a few times, and when I say folks, I mean the businesses on the corridor. It's been really cold, as some of you have seen. But trying to make sure we stay on top of issues that we're hearing about. We are hearing about issues we were not at first, but more people we continue to encourage them to speak out about that. So we are working to address all of those. You heard about the multi-agency center. That is kind of all of our eggs in the basket of making sure that's how we solve or begin to solve some unhoused challenges here in Wichita and Sedgwick County. That's an $80 million project. And we are working towards that. I think it's a really good solution. Some of the challenges with our unhoused and really anybody needing services is where they are. You might go to one place and get one piece and they tell you to drive 3 miles to another place. If you don't have any transportation, you have to get on one of our buses. Sometimes that takes quite a while. You may not get there in time. So this place having everything in one space will be good. Because then if you need to go somewhere else, you might be walking 50. So the hope is to get that going. The legislature has tentatively said they would support the additional amount that we've asked. They have pledged some already. We also have our tree canopy policy. Honestly, I didn't know I would get as much feedback as I have on the tree canopy policy. But in short, this part of the city is a heat island. And over the years, we've lost mature trees and tree cover. So this is hotter than the rest of Wichita. There are a lot of people frustrated about us planting those trees. Some saying that we'll block security cameras, some just don't want them there. Some argue we don't take care of the ones we have now. But no matter what, if we don't get those trees up, this continues to be hotter than the rest of our city. And there's two main heat islands, and it's one in District 1 and there's one in District 6. That's not us saying that, that's NASA. And so we use a NASA study to look at that. So what we are trying to do is make an investment now that in 15 or so years, when those trees are taller, will help us out. Yes, we can do a better job on taking care of our trees, but again, it comes back to budget, because oftentimes when it's time to make some cuts, it's those types of things, unless the community really says that's what we want. I always use the street sweeper example. We used to sweep streets 4 times a year. COVID came around, we had that COVID recession. We cut that. It was once a year, in some places, once every other year. And I hear it sometimes, but when we talk about where we want to put those resources, we don't have a lot of people showing up in those spaces. I hear it, I communicate it out as one council member. It's different if the community, and when I say a lot, I'm not saying 50 or 100 people. That's great. If 10 people show up, that's a lot of people on the issue. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we don't have 10 people showing up on an issue all the time. We created an entire sustainability board because 5 people, and I think at one point it might have jumped to 12, continued to show up for 6 months talking about sustainability. We saw it was an important thing, but we didn't have a board, and they continued to make that request and demand it happen. So again, even showing up in groups of 5 or 10 can make a difference. The Carl G. Brewer Community Center, as you know, FEMA has been a thorn in my side this entire time. We have tentative approval from FEMA, but there is a required by law. So again, education process, they are basically saying yes, but because of congressional law, we have to wait 120 days in case somebody protests about coming out of the flood zone. I don't think anybody would. And when I said that to someone, they said, actually, you'd be surprised. Guess who would protest against that?
Flood insurance.
Insurance companies. They'll protest. I don't care what they have to say on that. That's good for people, but legally, we have to do the 120 days. So hopefully in May, we'll move forward with that. 15th Street Bridge is coming along. That will come to the District Advisory Board in March. 15th Street Bridge will go from being a vehicular bridge to a pedestrian bridge. There will be some art added to that. That presentation will be at the District Advisory Board. That's another board that you definitely want to go check out. Zoning applications. So if we don't want to see something zoned a certain way, or if we do, that comes to the District Advisory Board before it comes to us as a council. The District 1 Advisory Board meets the first Monday of the month at 6 o'clock. So this coming Monday, 6 o'clock, we'll have a DAB meeting. It's a lot on the agenda. One of those is campaign finance. That's one of the things that we asked to go back out to the District Advisory Boards. Whatever your view on that, we want to hear from you. 6 o'clock on Monday. Another thing that I continue to work on, again, if you remember what happened when we appointed the District 3 council member before Councilmember Hoheisel, our process is a little odd. If us council members don't agree and there's ties or no clear majority, we continue to vote every week until we get to a 5th round and we flip a coin. That's not fair for a district to meet. So I suggested some form of ranked choice voting where people get to rank all their candidates out. It really will do everything in 2 days. So the DAB will have one night, you'll rank them out. The person who gets a clear majority will be the person recommended to the council. And the person who does not, there's a consensus that shuffles around all the first place votes until you get a recommendation. Council would do the same thing, and then we would vote on that. No coin tosses, no 5 weeks without a council member, happens pretty quickly. That I think will be coming back either to a workshop. We've already talked about it a couple of times. I think it even, it's went to workshop tab. So it's either gonna come back to a workshop or go to council for a vote. I'll make sure you all know about that as well. Looking ahead, this year, still looking at quality housing ordinances. The last council did take the step to pass the retaliatory eviction ordinance. So folks who are landlords who get upset that a tenant wants heat in the winter or cold in the summer or something fixed, and they try to evict them, you'll be able to get some justice through the city. If convicted, that landlord will have to pay at least $1,000 and up to $2,500 per incident. So every time it happens, they'll have to pay that, if convicted. That process has started. We have an email address for that. I encourage everybody who thinks they're being retaliated against to reach out to me. We'll get that process started. I have been working with Public Works on the way to improve concrete residential streets. That's something I continue to hear about. Folks are excited to see the asphalt getting done, but not the concrete. And that's because the concrete costs way more than the asphalt. The city had quietly began to look at putting some money away to do concrete streets, but putting away $1 million a year is not gonna do a whole lot for concrete streets. You might get 3 or 4 streets out of that, honestly. So we're looking at moving one of the projects in District 1 that might give us in District 1, $7 million to get started. And if I'm able to get that going, then we'll start looking at evaluating concrete streets and getting those started. So those of you in neighborhoods with concrete streets, trying to get something going for you, even if it doesn't happen when I'm in office, at least we're laying the groundwork for that to happen. So we'll be working on that, and as we get more of that information, I'll let you know. Still working on more inclusive contracting with the city, still supporting Second Street Transit and working towards that. Still hoping to do more investments in quality of life and also job creation in District 1. When we look at investments in quality of life, that's one of the reasons I was so upset about whomever did this with the Jackie Robinson statue. I'm not undeterred from that. I'm going to keep making sure that we invest in community. That will get replaced. I know it will. The funds are there. The will is there. The unity in our city is there. But also, I want to make sure we continue to invest in community. So those are things that are on the horizon. And the last update on the statue, again, if you saw the GoFundMe, 22 is over $180,000. MLB has actually agreed to fund the new statue, so that means that $180,000 can help out with things League 42 is doing, but also security upgrades. That statue won't go back the same that you saw before. There will be upgrades to that site to prevent people to get in there. We haven't decided what each of those security protocols will be, but that will happen. And when that statue is here, you can expect a big celebration. So make sure you're ready. We've already talked about that as well. Law enforcement is still looking at different leads that they have received. I had even received some leads anonymously and turned that over to them. So hopefully in the next few days or week or so, we'll hear some good news on an arrest and identification if we did it. But they are looking into that. You saw that the truck was discovered. The video is helping with that. And I'll be honest, the international attention this is receiving, I've heard from people in different countries about this. It's putting a lot of pressure on the folks who did it. I think that's why you saw the parts of the statue burned out south, trying to get rid of it and get rid of any evidence. But there's a lot of pressure being put on those folks. We're gonna keep it up. Actually have an interview later with the national media source about this again. We're gonna keep putting pressure until we can get them and do some good. Also, I think there's 2 groups working with some young people that want to speak out. It's always us adults, not always the young folks, so they'll have a voice as well. Looking forward to that. One thing, I can't say everything about it. I am really excited about the Brewer Center. Some of the artists that we've looked at, we haven't selected one yet, but the abilities that they have, that's gonna be beautiful and it's gonna be colorful. All of them I'm excited about. Here in a week and a half or so, we'll be looking at selecting a final one. The Brewer family is a part of this as well. Mrs. Brewer and also Carlo's been there as well. So looking forward to that. I think everybody will be excited about it. Those are the major updates. Happy to answer any questions if you have.
I want to know, How do you go about getting those tractor trailer trucks rerouted from coming through residential area? Because I've watched and watched as I travel from 21st Street to 17th Street, 13th Street, they're over on 9th Street, where all the houses are going up and has been there for decades. They're shaking it up over there. And it's just not right because there's plenty of businesses and park areas and non-residential homes in that little distance that they can travel and take their products without just shaking up our homes.
Yeah, so there's actually a master plan for truck routes. We modified it. Man, pandemic throws me off. We modified that, it was either 2019 or 2021. But you would just, I'll get with you after this and give you my card. So it's one of the things that comes before council, we'll do that. It takes probably 6 or so months for those truck drivers to understand the reroute. But when we do it, it's based on neighborhood concern. And then if they're going to a specific business, talking with that business about how we can reroute trucks to get there. Some of their concern has been, or at least in that one instance, they have to pay for the additional mileage or fuel or whatever. What I like to do in situations like that is just sit everybody down and let's figure that out. But that wasn't my district when it happened. But in this case, I'll just get with you. What we will do is probably sit down with you and other neighbors, any businesses where those trucks may go, and then see about a reroute from there.
Yeah, they haven't been there. They just popped up all of a sudden. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, my kitchen and my back room is just shaking all the time. I'm like, what?
No, I'll get with you on it.
What can we do about, we talked about trucks?
Your wife.
Oh, no.
He's gonna do the same thing.
I just want to make sure you ain't getting in trouble.
Thank you for watching my back. But major concern in our areas, why are these 18-wheelers parking in front of their houses? They're up and down residential streets.
Yeah.
Are there ordinances that keep them out of the neighborhood?
It shouldn't be over there, but I will look into that. If it's approved over there, then they can, and I might be able to get that changed, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I've noticed that in driving our area, these people are bringing their 18-wheelers home with them in parking.
Yes, they are.
My concern is that all of these things that need to be right, that the children who are growing up don't look at this as normal. And it's not normal to have 18-wheeler parked in front of your house.
I agree. I'll work on that. Same neighborhood?
Kind of, sort of, up the street, there was a tractor trailer truck that got stuck because the trees neglected bowing over the trees on this side and on this side, meeting tree limbs and just that bowing
Are
down.
you talking about that lot on Pike?
Yes, sir, I think that is not too far from the park. The truck got stuck because the tree, I think, should have been trimmed and cut a long time ago. But whether or not the truck had any business driving and parking in that area, but I think he was just passing through and he got stuck. So they eventually had to come and get the cutters to cut the tree away so the truck could be free. See, all of this neglect, that was probably one of the reasons why so many people are against the new trees coming in, because we have a definite neglect of trees bowing over so terribly.
We're talking about the, I'm just sure where they live, but, we're talking about the greater Dunbar area. That's what.
Yeah, this is up around the corner from the, Murdoch Park.
Yeah.
You had your hand up?
Yes, where are you planting the trees? Where are they
All
going?
throughout the Heat Island, so, in front of some houses, in front of some, there's a lot more on public property, so you'll see more in like Murdoch Park, we're putting some in some of the medians where we have grass. All of our parks will have more trees. The city owns a lot of the land over by the Boys and Girls Club, so if you go by there, you'll see a bunch of new trees, we planted those over there.
What kind of trees are they?
That's a question I don't know the answer to, but I can get that for you.
Well,
They are intending to put in
Yeah,
native
for- it's like a
trees.
list of like 15 different species. I know.
So can somebody sign up to ask for a tree in their yard?
That's a question I've
Yeah.
never been asked. I would say, I think you can, but
You can.
Okay, who do I ask?
you can just talk to me. I'll send it over to Forestry. Forestry is who you would talk to, but if you try to get to them, I can get you.
Okay, thank you.
Does the Redbud Trail qualify for that? When energy goes in, they're gonna really wipe out a lot of those trees. Are you thinking about putting those trees back in, or is that not in the heat area?
I believe it is in the heat area, but that will be determined by what type of tree, how tall it can be. And how it would interact with those power lines. If they would get too tall, they can't go in.
Well, there are trees that would, but if you've seen the Redbud Trail past Woodlawn on, it's like the desert. They just wiped out trees on both sides to put those things in there. And that's what I'm worried about is gonna happen to the Redbud Trail.
Laura, I'll come back.
Same topic about the trees. I appreciate you mentioning the heat island because we all feel it here. The city of Wichita is a heat island on top of the two districts that you mentioned being especially heat islands. And I love that the trees are starting to go, and I'm hearing that on the sustainability board. We talk a lot about trees. So thank you for that. But you also said something about the concrete streets. Concrete is a light color and it reflects. So the heat is not absorbed like it is on blacktop streets. I know blacktop is much cheaper, but if you're able to at least retain what concrete you have, please don't pave it with blacktop. Because does anybody, I mean, I did when I was a kid. I knew where to run real fast with my barefoot to get across the street, right? Well, oh yeah, you could tell, it's hot. So the less blacktop we have, the better we are. Or get it painted, because I've talked with Gary Jensen about that already. I don't know where that's gone, because he said they were looking at it.
I know Bob likes the idea. I don't know.
I just wanna ask a question and pose an idea. Question is, do it take a king to bring the green to our neighborhood? And this guy asked me what I meant by that. I said, well, let me explain. This city has Martin Luther King highway that you drive through, not a street that you drive to. If this city had a street that you drive to, like an MLK Boulevard, and the city would give the business incentives to put their business there, so the dream that we talk about in our conversations every year that we go up to 29th Street, the dream we could have here in this city where every one of us could possibly come to that cafe, like a Connie's over in the neighborhood, you know, various other things. You don't have to go out to neighborhood like in New York. When you go to New York, everything's in Harlem, where everybody black is crazy over there in Harlem if you go in the wrong area. But here, you understand, but that's MLK. They have an MLK, they have a Malcolm X there. I know we're not as big, but I've been to Kansas City, there's an MLK Boulevard there. In Oklahoma City, there's an MLK Boulevard there. Why don't we have an MLK Boulevard in Wichita? And then talk to the business people and let them know that the city will give you some incentives if you bring your business over here, and everyone can do what Martin Luther King talked about. The green, the black, brown, all of us can go, and we don't always have to leave our neighborhood to go to have the fun. You can go right down the street and be there. That's the idea.
Okay. 2 points on that. One, before I answer that directly, did remind me, just so you all know, and I'm working to make sure neighborhoods are involved in this. So we know urban renewal be built 135 through our community. In the next 15 or 20 years, I won't be on council. They will be rebuilding that. I just found that out a couple weeks ago. My goal will be to make sure every neighborhood that touches 135 will be at that table. I've already requested that through Public Works to get with KDOT. So here in the next couple months, I've asked for at least an annual meeting for the next however many years until there's some real actual plans on that. I want to make sure we as a community are involved with the rebuild and what that might look like as far as entrances, exits, improvements under the highway in neighborhoods, not leaving us out, not tearing out our homes for that. We need to be at that table. We were not at that table when it happened the first time. So I have requested that. I won't have a whole lot of updates. Again, that's 2 decades from now, but my goal is to build the foundation my last 2 years to have a regular meeting with KDOT and community on what that will look like. I think it's gonna be better if we are involved in that rather than them just presenting a plan. So that is coming up. To your point, I can't speak to the MLK piece. If the community picks a street and they want it renamed, I'm pretty good at getting stuff renamed. We probably could do that. But what's more important to me is it shouldn't matter. We should just be investing in community. Now, we are working towards that. Again, in government, incremental change is not always liked. We have done some things. We created a Propel Fund where small businesses and the targeted people of color are able to apply for up to $20,000. It is a low interest loan, I think 2.9 to 3%, 36 months, no collateral. Tried to make it as easy to get as possible. It's not a whole lot of money, but it's more than what was there before. And it meets a gap that banks won't always loan into. Intrust Bank saw the value and it actually invested $100,000 into it to help us out. And initially, or at least 88,000 of that is targeted to District 1. That came from District 1 funds. The other is citywide, but again, looking at either women or people of color. It's open to everybody, but the preference is trying to fill those gaps. If we look at revenues of businesses, it is businesses of colors that don't have the same access to capital as white businesses, and they tend to show when it comes to revenue, they don't make the same. There are some exceptions, but those exceptions are not the rule. Those are just exceptions. So we do have that. We've also been working on economic development policy, and that's why I'll be inviting the assistant city manager here to look at how do we continue to incentivize smaller businesses and not just the bigger ones, and especially folks who just have a dream of opening up some shops, some food place, and looking at our community. When we talk about the Neighborhood Reinvestment Act, I've been saying for a couple of years now, we need to restart that. It's starting to gain some traction and looking at how can we do that in specific areas, but we have to modify that map. In District 1, it stops at 21st Street. It doesn't go north of 21st Street. There's opportunity north of 21st Street in our community, but we have to make sure we expand those and bring more funds into it. We've also talked with some in the state about making some funds available, but it shouldn't have to go to an MLK. It should just go to the areas that need it, no matter the street name. So we are working on that. I do agree with you on that. But between those incentives, the housing incentives we've made, we are looking at trying to make those investments and opportunities in our community. And I know that we are all tired of master planning. But at some point, we have to take in the plans that we already have, the pieces that are relevant today. 2024 is different than some of these plans in 2005, 6. So we have to look at what's relevant today. How can we make that happen? And there may be some form of combining that into a new plan, which means you may have to answer a few more questions. But those are all things that we want to work on. But also, as the mayor said, we have to find people that are willing to invest. I've talked to a few people who look like us, who have some wealth, who aren't investing. They're not interested. They don't want to. We got to change that. And hopefully we can find somebody who will start. I think once we see the start, we'll see some movement. I'm hoping that Bernard Knowles project on 17th and Hillside will inspire people. Hopefully he'll be getting started pretty soon. But as we see projects start and that investment begin to happen, hopefully we see more people that will go into that. But also with our incentives, again, that's why we bring people to meetings and try to come where you are, but also at these breakfasts so that they can get the input and see that it's not just Brandon Johnson talking, it's everybody else is saying these same things and we got to do that.
So in the same vein of businesses, the new director of the Kansas Small Business Development Center, I really like the approach she's doing and having now the, coffee and connection at the Metroplex and trying to get synergy with businesses. And they don't unfortunately have a lot of connection with local businesses right in that area. And we've had some talks of how we can, spur that and having talks with the Urban League as well, because they are not really in the lane of connecting with businesses. And I think we've had conversation maybe 2.5 years ago that you had said you had a networking meeting with some businesses in the area. And perhaps we could just revisit that and ideas of how to engage and see what the needs are to match with some workshops that the Business Development Center may have, and we could actually do in person in the area to stimulate, possible investments and how can small businesses maybe create more jobs in their businesses, but don't have the resources or the knowledge base to do so. So that's one. And then my second point is a future project that I'm excited about is the expansion of the bike trail on 17th Street, the connecting 2025, I think I saw that. And if there's maybe opportunity to really enhance that, like, you know, we did some of the things on the Red Bud Trail, but now it's gonna be connecting, so we could have, I don't know, something to highlight that effort.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the businesses, the challenge is, what I tend to see is there are some people who feel confident enough to go to one of those meetings. So you have a lot of folks who just feel like they aren't qualified, or they can't be in the space with some other folks who might be maybe a little more polished.
Right.
And it's just getting them to understand they can qualify, they can still get this, you don't have to wear a suit over there. That's been the biggest challenge I've seen. I just keep trying to get people to know up. And have a separate type of group meeting and then bring those folks over.
And I think that's what we're talking about. Door to door, like going, you know, one to one. And my office has as well, so I think we're gonna see that effort.
We are, we are over, I would say, 2 more questions.
Bob's getting big, trying to get in.
I thought you were just messing with the sign.
How can we request help to trim the trees in our neighborhood? And one other question, when are you gonna start set a date for neighborhoods to start meeting here in the evening?
Second question first, once we get our CSR hired, we'll do that. I wanna wait, so they can get hired, get their feet wet, get trained. And then I wanna introduce them to neighborhoods as well, so hopefully this month or next month, probably in March. March is a little tough because the second week we won't be in town. All of us are going to DC for our annual Capitol Hill visit. So if we did do it in March, it would be the end of March or maybe beginning of April. But I'm just waiting on the CSR for that. As for the tree trimming, that is forestry. You can reach out to, at this point, me or Maddie for District 1, and we can get you in contact, but they are behind.
Yes, they are.
So it's gonna be a while. It's good to get in the queue, but they are about 12, 15 months behind right now. Cause it's that much, but again, we go back to 2020, we cut that type of stuff. We wanted to make sure we funded the essential services, but tree trimming was not one of those things that we heard a lot about. And we were probably 90 to 180 days behind at that point. And then once we cut that, it was tough. And then we did buy a new machine to help out with efficiency, but we then got really behind. So our priorities first are the dangers and then the other trees. So if there's a tree that's dead, but you can tell it's about to break and damage something, we're going to that tree before that queue. So that's the problem. It's just gonna take a while.
Thank you.
Okay, my quick, concern basically, the neighborhood and what it looks like. We have, well, for instance, section 17 and Grove. What is that all about? We have downtowns, we have, areas that look like it used to be some kind of business, but it's just there. And then up and down, Grove, there's just cars parking up almost on the porch or right in front of the house. And my concern is that I see all of this as an older person, and I'm thinking about the baby who's growing up, and that they would think that this is normal, and it's not. And so what can we do about,
But 17th and Grove they're all probably gonna get notices anyway, because we're about to redo 17th Street from Hillside to 135. So they'll have to get some of that cleaned up anyway, because that road is getting completely redone. The rest of it, we just need to determine where to do that pilot I was telling you about. We'll go out and inform everybody of the violations they have. We have pretty good success with compliance once they know. some of the biggest challenges in our community, as you know, is people parking in the grass and thinking that's okay because it's their yard, but it's against the ordinance. But the pilot, I think, will get people to know that. Of course, I'll hear all the folks saying that we're doing too much, but I think once we get that out there, then we'll be able to kind of crack down on that. And then the other challenge Mr. Roseborough wanted me to answer or to bring up was people having these businesses in their home and then parking all the vehicles and all that stuff and all the noise late at night. So we are gonna get on that. Again, I was able to get MABCD an extra $250,000 last year in their budget, and a lot of that is enforcement, and I'm looking at trying to get some more for more staffing. I know they need more staff. Some of those inspectors have 600 or so cases, which is too much. So we'll keep working on that to try to get those addressed. But 17th and Grove, that's happening, I think, later this year, so that should hopefully get cleaned up.
Well, please help the elderly people, and give us some relief from these booming cars that either going up and down the street or next door to.
I got you. Last one.
No, Mr. Stone, I'm 70. I might be one of them booms.
But then we might have to do something.
Can I hit one more thing for the elderly? And we had more of them here earlier, but the relief that the city is giving folks who qualify for the homestead, the relief that the city is giving, if you get $60 back on your homestead, then you can apply for this city thing. Well, I don't know the right thing to call it, but I thought maybe you could speak to that on your taxes.
If you qualify for the state homestead, reach out to me. I will get you connected. You could probably get another 25% tax break.
They've got the applications here too. Julie has them, so.
So I really have to get somewhere. Last question.
This actually ties into a lot of what people are talking about, the trees and the lack of care that's been given to these low-income poor neighborhoods. The idea of reparations. So there is generational trauma that is infiltrated within all these low-income neighborhoods, and yet our government really just wants to assimilate people and put them back into the workforce without actually accommodating for the harm, damage, and prejudice enacted on communities. So there are obviously contemporary issues that need to be addressed with the WPD, with them brutalizing protesters in 2020, particularly BLM protesters. Reparations. What is our government, particularly local government, doing to advocate, at least, and particularly since we have our state representatives here, to implement atonement and even recognize that harm is being done to people in the past, because it does seem like there's a lot of intentional ignorance about the violence produced by the city and denial to pay those people back for those harms. And a lot of people don't have the ability to go through these litigious court proceedings to verify that the police or the city is committing these abuses. So a lot of what's happening, I think, in these places, low-income areas, they need to be given reparations and just money. Give them material goods in their literal pockets, and don't make them jump through hoops, because generational trauma is a real thing. And it seems like the conversation is always geared towards, well, how can we make you work for it after we've already abused you? So it's just a comment that needs to be.
You are conflating what the majority in the state legislature is saying with everyone else, because everyone is not saying that. You're also conflating police with reparations. And as a descendant of slaves myself, which are you?
I am not, but that doesn't.
So as a descendant of slaves myself, what I am looking at in talking to those at the state level and others is, one, how you verify that, because not all of us who look like this are actually descendants of slaves. And then two, where's those funds coming from? Because again, I would argue a majority in the legislature is not gonna just say, since we have $3 billion extra, we're gonna give reparations.
Of course, they're here to profit.
So those conversations have happened with a few members of the legislature. Locally, there are some activists that are looking at trying to have that conversation. Some of the challenges, there's a young lady who I think she's not on council anymore out of Evansville, Illinois, that told many of us a few years ago she was gonna give reparations for her city. She was successful. Descendants of slaves can get it $25,000, I believe. Those revenues come from the legalization of cannabis. So when you look at Kansas, we don't have that. We have a legislature that continues to look at cutting taxes, which reduces the pool of funds that could be used to pay out reparations. And then we really need to have a conversation of creatively, how can we give reparations that may not all be cash? Is it access to things that benefit the community? Those conversations are happening. They're not always happening out in public because oftentimes when we talk reparations, we have the other folks that come out to say that we are now a post-racial society because we've had a black president, a black female vice president. There is no more racism or discrimination. Systemic racism is gone and we don't have those problems. So rather than us getting tired of arguing that that's not true, many of us are having those conversations in the background, but it's gonna come down to one, a funding source, and if the legislature would ever legalize cannabis, that's a great source, because you could tax that, have some extra funds, you could expand Medicaid, and also do something like reparations. But often that will come from there. As you look at the city budget, 80% of our funds go to salaries. So if we were to look at cutting all services, staff, and trying to pay out reparations, we wouldn't even be able to touch what descendants of slaves are owed as a city. That's really gonna be really a federal government thing, and they need to step up, or the legislature doing some form of it. But that's kind of where we are now, and there are different groups of us talking about that. And in small ways, we can have some policies that help out, but it won't be direct funds in the way that we should. And honestly, on the federal level, the United States can't afford reparations. Because when you look at the economy of the South built on cotton, who was picking it? It was the black folks. So if you look at how this country grew from there, we'll never have enough money to pay us back. So we have to find ways to make it relevant here. It's a hard pill to swallow for those of us who are. My great grandmother was one generation out of slavery. And it's just not fair. And those of us who have made something of ourselves, again, exceptions, not the rule. We have to do more, but it's gonna take the heart and minds of those, the majority in the legislature, to do more about it.
If I could real quick, Councilman, to your question at the state level, there are those of us that are having those conversations as we speak. There are some things that I'm not at privileged to say right now, because of some of the reasons that Councilman Johnson mentioned, but rest assured that it is being looked at the state level.
If you have time, if you're in town, you should come to one of our protests this Thursday at 3 at the Sedgwick County Courthouse. We protest police brutality that hasn't been addressed in our city. So
Unfortunately, I'll be in Topeka. I'm in Topeka all week. I'm just here on the weekend.
I'll get your card.
But definitely.
The intersection ICT.
All right, so I will let you know, we are in a weird spot on the District 1 breakfast. I have not had a confirmation on location for the next one. So you'll probably get a phone call. If you did sign in, your phone number is there, or email, we will reach out to you either by phone or email and let you know where it's at. So next month, it's either gonna be MABCD, which for tall grass and weeds and making those complaints that we need to make. That's either March or April. Again, don't have all of that confirmed just yet, but I will let you know. But again, the District 1 breakfast is the first Saturday of the month at 9:30 a.m. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Hopefully we have a big crowd like this. We'll have food as well. I would have more time, but I committed to do another interview on CNN and they are expecting me in 10 minutes. So I gotta go do it.
Thank you for making the